there, listeners. Are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit chooselovemovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love.
I want to introduce Jessica and her incredible book, Breathwork and Psychotherapy. Now we're going to talk about how those two things go together because we usually don't think about both of them together. But I want to welcome Jessica to the Choose Love podcast. She is a pioneering breathwork facilitator, integrative psychotherapist, obviously the author of Breathwork and Psychology. For more than 30 years, Jessica has helped people understand the transformative power of conscious breathing, how it supports emotional healing, self-awareness, and resilience. Her work beautifully bridges neuroscience, psychology, and compassionate human development, offering practical tools that educators, parents, and communities can use to create calmer, more connected, and more emotionally healthy environments. Jessica's approach aligns deeply with our mission of choosing love, reminding us that every breath is an opportunity to return to presence, regulate our emotions, and respond with courage and compassion. In fact, breath is a necessary component. It's why we have that component in every single lesson that we teach. Jessica, we're so grateful to have you here. Welcome to the Choose Love podcast.
Well, thank you, Scarlett, to you and all the listeners. I am deeply inspired by the work that you are doing and the calling and vocation that you've had about choosing love. And I think that we can discover together today and give tools to everybody that's listening of how not only can choosing love be a philosophy, but it can be a lived biological experience moment to moment that infuses us with great joy and capacity.
Wow, biological experience. That means that it's not just happening in our head, it's happening in our hearts and in our body as well. So we're just being effused with love. How wonderful is that? That sounds like a great thing. You know, the first thing I want to ask you, and I thought this was so interesting, is that you call it breath work. Breath work. Work. Is breathing work? Because, you know, we do it every day, all day long. So why do you call it work?
Well, first of all, the term breath work has been around for a long time. It predates me. And I actually write about in the book. I have a little section that you might have seen, Scarlett, that says breath work, breath play. And I talk about the fact that I did for a while work or play with the idea of starting to call it breath play. Now, of course, I mostly just call it conscious breathing. But why I eventually just aligned with the whole field that is known as breath work is actually because work in its most noble manifestation is supposed to be about a high calling. It's supposed to be about vocation. It's supposed to be about feeling called to something. And I think sadly, for many of us, we've had to do work that we didn't really feel enthused by. We were doing it for a paycheck, or, you know, because we were told that we had to for some reason by a particular culture. But in fact, there was a brilliant professor at the University of Michigan who had his whole work during his lifetime was to show that if everybody did work that actually spoke to who they were and their soul, that our economy would get better, our health outcomes would be tremendously better. And I felt like during the pandemic, we got in touch with the idea of essential workers, and we saw the nobility and the sacredness of that. And that just sort of clinched it for me, that between the idea of vocation being a sacred calling and the idea of essential workers, meaning what is it that matters most to us in life, I thought, okay, yeah, breath work, because we are breathing. We're breathing naturally all the time. However, when we decide to increase our intimacy with our breathing, when we decide to amplify our friendship with our breathing, our relatedness to our breathing, when we become willing to what I would like to call becoming fluent in the language of breathing, we actually are going to do the work like you would do in a relationship. You're going to do the work with your breathing to go deeper, to get more expansive, to build more wholesomeness. And so that's not onerous. That's not like a hard thing. That's like the investment that you make with your child or with a significant other or with a friend or with a colleague. You put in the work to make the relationship the best it can be. And so that's what breath work is. It's spending time consciously with our breathing so that our breathing gets to shine in its capacity for us, and what we can create together becomes optimal.
That's beautiful. And I was thinking along those terms as well, even with Choose Love, it's work to become the best version of yourself. It's work to think about what you think about and to thoughtfully, and what we call make a heroic choice to thoughtfully respond with love, especially in a situation that's conflictual or where you're triggered. And so this work benefits not only us, but it benefits those around us through the ripple effect. And that ripple effect just keeps going. Now, you said you use the term conscious breathing, and you use that term a lot. You call it CB in your book. And for those who are listening who don't know what that is, could you explain how that differs? I mean, I know that we're going over, the real basics, but I just want to make sure that everybody who's listening understands exactly what we're talking about. Conscious breathing, it seems obvious, but what's involved in that? And then, and why do we want to do breath work? Why do we want to go a little bit above and beyond what our body's already doing just to keep us alive every day? Why do we want to focus on this?
Those are all really beautiful questions, Scarlett. Thank you. So first of all, I would offer that we are being breathed all the time. We don't have to spend a single ounce of our volitional energy to breathe most of the time, unless we are under great challenge. There's some kind of horrific situation or an illness or something where we may actually have to work at it a little bit. We are being breathed without having, we can take all that volitional energy and we can scroll on our phones. We can be, gossiping with somebody. We can decide to work out or do something much more healthy than the two things I just described. But the point is that we get to choose what we do with that energy. And yet the truth is we are being breathed all the time. And I don't think we understand the implications of that completely, physiologically, emotionally, and spiritually. And then I would say, to bring this to love, because it really is all about love in the beginning and in the middle and in the end, that when we're born, we are wired to do two things right away. One of them is to breathe, and the other is to love. we will love our parents even when they are not capable of loving us well.
Mhm.
Although I would submit to you that I think every parent does love, it may be buried under terrible violence and all kinds of other things that are happening within their body, but
To
at
the
any
best of their ability,
to the best of their ability.
based on their own trauma and pain and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But even when they don't love us well, even sadly when they harm us, we will love them. We're just wired to love, and we're wired to breathe. Now, the twinned immediacy of that is profound, neurologically, emotionally, and spiritually. And so when I say that we're being breathed, and then I say we are choosing, we are wired to love and wired to breathe, I would make that full circle and say we are being loved every moment.
Mm.
And one of the things that we can come to experience when we consciously breathe, which I'll explain in just a moment, is that we can have a physiological experience, an embodied experience of being loved every moment.
Ooh.
So we're wired to breathe, we're wired to love, and we are being breathed and we are being loved. Now, what's different about conscious breathing than unconscious breathing has a spiritual, cognitive, emotional, and physiological impact or implication. So, at a spiritual level, to have the understanding that we are being breathed without, ever having to use 1 ounce of our volitional energy, like something larger than us has created this. It's
Mm.
making it happen. It's giving us an opportunity in each moment to begin again. I was very touched when I read the story of Father Lenteri. I believe his name is Bruce Lenteri, but Bruno Lenteri, Father Bruno Lenteri, who has been beatified. They're waiting for one more miracle for him to become a saint, but his primary spiritual teaching was begin again, begin again, begin again. And the thing that can happen when we bring awareness to our breathing at a spiritual level is that we can begin again every breath with realizing that something larger than ourselves has created breath and is breathing us, and that we are given the opportunity in every moment to reset, to realign, to get clear with what really matters with every breath.
Mm.
That's on the spiritual level. On the cognitive and emotional level, or what we might call the psyche, we have these conditioned patterns that we get into, and they're firing extremely rapidly. Now, what's happening differently physiologically when we breathe consciously from when we breathe unconsciously is literally neurologic. When we breathe automatically, the breathing is being stimulated from the brain stem, from a little part of the brainstem called the pre-Botzinger complex, which is a rhythm generator. And that was named by a UCLA professor, Jack Feldman, who found that part of the brain. And so this rhythm generator is putting us in motion, it's interesting that it's a rhythm generator. It's not an on and off switch. And it's putting us into some kind of heartbeat, motion beat, breathing beat. It's a very lovely metaphor and reality. When we breathe consciously, and all that means on one level is we become aware that we're breathing. We bring our attention to the fact that we're breathing. What happens differently is that the neocortex is now participating in the breathing. And because the neocortex is participating in the breathing, and we're probably bringing awareness to the breath for a reason, for a purpose, our limbic brain, which is our emotional brain that appreciates things, that moves towards things, that feels relational towards things, also starts to manifest. So now we have the neocortex the limbic brain and the primitive brain or the brain stem operating together. And so what that does, first of all, is it interrupts unconscious patterns and habits. So for instance, you were talking about choosing love, choosing to be courageous in a given moment when we might want to have this reaction that is just, anger or frustration or fear or withdrawal even, and not taking our place in what we need to do. So that, conceptually, it takes a lot of moral courage to be able to do that. When we breathe consciously, and if we would breathe consciously at that moment, we are creating a physiological interruption of the normal thing that we would usually do and creating the opportunity to begin again, to make a different choice, to choose love,
Yes.
to choose wisdom. So conscious breathing, in terms of breath work, simply bringing awareness to our breath, simply paying attention to our breath already creates these spiritual, psychological, cognitive, and physiological changes, in addition to which we know that every breath, this is now beyond dispute scientifically, every single breath is psychophysiological. And what that means is that there's a psychological component going into the breath, and there's a physiological component going into the breath. And the way that we breathe then gives input into our psychology and into our physiology. So we have this incredible capacity to affect our psychophysiological spectrum with every breath that we have. Now, breath work can go beyond just conscious breathing, which also, by the way, creates what we might call global neural coherence, because we know that the respiratory circuits are just massively wired throughout the brain and the rest of the body too, by the way. So when we stimulate neocortex and limbic brain, as well as brain stem in service of breathing, we're getting a more global activation of the brain, a more global coherence between those different parts of the brain, all through the mechanism of breathing. And breath work, therefore, just conscious breathing or mindfulness, as some people would call it, can be very powerful. But in addition to that, if we become more intimate with our breathing, if we are able to befriend it, if we're able to understand what it's doing for us and how we can utilize it to cultivate and develop ourselves as human beings, then we can also do things like breathe more deeply, breathe slower, breathe quicker, change the ratio of the inhale to the exhale, choose whether we're breathing through our nose or our mouth for particular situations, and breathe in segments, and all different kinds of possibilities that will have specific physiological and psychological effects.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. I wanted to say, so breath definitely impacts our nervous system, which is some of what you were talking about, stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system. So the rest and digest when we do it consciously, when we focus on it. And, I just want to ask you, because I was just looking at statistics for something I was writing for Choose Love, and the hospitalizations for kids for mental health issues doubled since 2016. Depression is up, suicide is up, anxiety is certainly up. In fact, there is statistics showing that the average onset age for anxiety is 6 years old, and that over 70% of kids do not get professional help, so they suffer alone. And the long-term outcomes of just untreated anxiety are everything that we see that is negative in our society. The dis-ease that we're seeing could stem from that. How could breath work and teaching kids and modeling for kids, how could that help a 6-year-old that's feeling anxiety, or even, a parent that is feeling inadequate to be present for that 6-year-old, more research. And actually, this is a report that came out from our former US Surgeon General called Parents Under Pressure. It said that 41% of parents today self-state that they are so stressed out they can't function.
Yeah.
That is not good news for our kids. So you've got kids with anxiety, you've got parents that feel at least inadequate to help the kids. And I feel like breath work is a big part of the solution.
Mm. Well, my God, those statistics are just tragic, aren't they? And wow, that's incredible for you to be doing all that research, Scarlett. I would like to tell you a brief story about transformation with breath work, and then with anxiety and asthma, actually, and then talk a little bit about parents and children and the kind of culture that we could cultivate, and then say a little bit about the state of flow that breathwork can create for all of us. So just to understand the depth of the psychophysiological impact and capacity of breathing and then of breath work, there was a beautiful young woman in the book. I call her Daniela. She had been just a vibrant child, very interested in the world and animals and art and politics and love and poetry and all of those kinds of things, but felt very isolated because of her father was a somewhat philandering and also very controlling of the wife, her mother and her. And then she had 3 brothers and her father. So she felt very, very isolated her whole childhood, to the point where she really felt depressed and agonized over herself and her life. And in her 20s, she had her first asthma attack, and it was so severe that she had to be put in the intensive care unit. And she remembers being in a tent, getting oxygen, and just literally begging people to touch her, because see, that was actually the trauma of her childhood, was that she had not been connected with and loved and really honored as a woman. So she just was like touch deprived. She was relationally deprived. So she's like now fighting for her life, and she's begging people. The body knows what it needs. And she's like begging people to touch her, and they wouldn't, because this was some years ago. And I think hospitals have evolved a little bit, but and anyway, so she made it, and she was sent home with inhalers and rescue meds and all of that kind of stuff. And she came to see me several years later, and we were doing a breath work session, which I can talk about what that is in a little bit, but basically doing a lot of deep breathing with a lot of permission to explore our inner self, our intrapsychic territory, if you will, with images and feelings and thoughts and all of that, and a skilled breath worker to support that facilitation. And she started having a memory of the hospital and of feeling like she wasn't going to make it. And then feeling how, as a child, she felt so rejected and untouched. And her breath started getting more and more intense, like almost like she was going to have an asthma attack. But we kept on letting her kind of breathe deeply and love herself in the face of all of these feelings. And all of a sudden, her breathing just broke open, and she felt like she was breathing fully for the first time since she was a young child. Now, she went on to do quite a number more of breathwork sessions, and she completely got off of her meds, her inhalers. Not that I would suggest that without great skill, but in her case, it was the resolution of that psychophysiological phenomenon that had happened, that she's 30 years later never had to use another inhaler or rescue med. And I say that so that when we say this next part for parents, and children, we understand this is not a shallow, this isn't just like a little technique that you do to kind of calm yourself down. There are profound psychophysiological transformations that can happen that can bring us a sense of wholeness, and they can heal us spiritually, cognitively, emotionally, and physiologically, and just give us a sense of vibrancy and possibility. I think it's Kierkegaard, the beautiful Christian philosopher, who talked about the fact that the person who is depressed or in despair cannot really breathe fully. He actually said this, and that you need the ability to be able to breathe again, to feel like there's even a possibility. So I'm happy to say that there are actually videos that people can find on the internet with little children saying things like, this little 6-year-old going, I was so mad at Johnny and I just wanted to like punch him out. And then I took 3 deep breaths and then I felt compassion for him. I mean, these kinds of things are showing up on the internet. And it's not because it's just a silly little technique. It's because you get these profound psychophysiological changes like I described in the story of Daniela. So one mom that I worked with, her brilliant son, Abraham, really brilliant. But by the time he was 5 or 6, he had anxiety. And you know what's so incredible, Scarlett? I don't think it's always about the parents. And I think sometimes parents don't take good enough care of their children. Sometimes there are parents that harm their children. We know this. But I think that our culture is under such stress, and there's such an assault from the overstimulation of input and, the digital world, and worry about the state of our world, ecologically or politically or culturally, just the kinds of messages people get all the time that get into the subliminal places in us. This child was raised by 2 of the most loving parents I ever could have imagined. And he loved them, and he had everything that he needed. They were of means. They spent time with him. They were happy, and he still had anxiety, like a lot of anxiety. And he would still have anger come up. Now, Jung and other therapists might say this, he was feeling collective anxiety. Maybe it's not even his anxiety. He's picking up on it, what other people are feeling, and as an empath, maybe carrying it. But at any rate, both she and he were exhausted from the sudden sort of outbursts of anxiety and anger. And just teaching Abraham that when he started to feel that way, we weren't going to go against his feeling of wanting to be angry and wanting to be anxious. We were actually going to breathe with it. So I would have him breathe like really fast, like, and move his fists in the air, like and even like, shake like he was anxious, or jump up and down, and then clap his hands, and then start again, begin again, and breathe several times, and then do that again. And he learned how to interrupt these patterns because they were really torturing him. He didn't want to be this way. And then he would feel like he could soften, and he could love his mother the way he wanted to, or love his brother, or go play with his friends. His mother, meanwhile, was learning a different kind of breathing because she wasn't anxious. She was feeling like she didn't know what to do. She was feeling out of resources. So I taught her a different kind of breathing, which is a very, very deep, slow breathing, where you learn how to extend your inhalation as much as you possibly can. And then you learn how to extend your exhalation as much as you possibly can. And this allows us to feel how much deeper we are than what we've been taking ourselves to be. And so between her kind of breathing that worked for her and his, their relationship was good, but his anxiety levels went down. He was able to interrupt them when they did come up, or his frustration. She started to feel much more full of resources to be present with him when these things would happen. And so these incidents started happening further and further apart and shorter and shorter. And I'm happy to say that they're both thriving today. And so I think that with every child, with every person, with every parent, we want to feel the capacity for self-empowerment. The drive for autonomy is real in a person. You know, we like to depend on people. We like to feel relational, but we also like to feel like we're capable of doing things on our own. And the studies have shown that workers who are given more autonomy in making their own decisions are able to love their work much longer than people who don't get to have any choice in their workplace. So one of the powerful things about breath work is that it's self-generating. You're not having something done to you. You're not getting a shot that's making you change your state. And as much as I love all the holistic modalities like acupuncture and chiropractic and many massage, it's still somebody doing something to you. It's so fun to feel how you can change your state by changing your breathing, or change your state by choosing to breathe consciously. And when you couple that with choosing to love, choosing to be present, choosing to be resourceful, and then you've got this powerful physiological experience of it, it's really a game changer. And that's why the little boy could say, and I took 3 deep breaths and I didn't feel angry anymore, at Johnny. Now, the long-term vision here is that parents and their children could breathe together every day for maintenance, not wait until something happens that they're upset, or they don't know what to do, or they're confused or anxious. But what if families, in the same way that families exercise together, eat together, some families pray together, or, they sing together, just do whatever they do. What if every day they brush their teeth together, they spent 7 minutes? I say that it takes only 7 minutes a day. And of course, everything over that is wonderful. But I found that 7 minutes is the sweet spot. 5 minutes, not quite enough. If they would spend 7 minutes together every day, just breathing as a part of their preparation for the day, or 7 minutes at the end of the day, breathing, and then maybe expressing their gratitudes, they would find that they would be building a thread, a culture in their family and in their way of being with other people that will start to serve them in good stead. So instead of it just being a state change every day, it'll become a trait change, after a while. And I would say that that's maybe the final thing that I would say here is you learn, the state of flow that the psychiatrist Csikszentmihalyi, if I'm saying it correct, shared with all of us, that extreme athletes can have that experience, or people that are doing artwork, they can get into a state of flow where it feels like something more wise than their normal self is guiding them. Some people have it say it's a spiritual experience. And they say that with those flow states, so you're in it, you're having the flow, and then it has to stop. You have to transition. Practices, that's like meditation, or, Tai Chi, or whatever it might be. There's a beginning, middle, and end to the practice. And then you have to talk about integrating it into everyday life. Well, there's one practice that you don't have to stop doing, and that's breathing. So the potential here, the integration is already happening during the practice session or during the breathwork session, because you're going to keep breathing. When you get up or when you walk around, you can continue to experience what has been experienced through the breathing. And that means that there's a potential that the flow state could keep on going longer too. So, I mean, there's so many more things. Your question is literally worth a 2-hour, conversation about what parents and children could do. I dream of a world, Scarlett, in which the first breath is met with such reverence, such care, such knowing that you want in that first breath for everyone else in that room to be regulated, self-regulating through their own breathing fully, so that there's a language and a culture of breathing right from the beginning. And then if every breath were honored of a person's life and we learned about the language of breathing, I actually say that breathing is the unifying language of the human species, and it unifies us somatically, emotionally, cognitively, and spiritually, but it unifies any 2, 3, or 8 billion people, because we can create in-group and out-group about anything: our hair color, our skin color, our language, where we go to school, what town we live in. I mean, the music we like can create that othering. There's only one group of people that you can't do that about, and that's the group of breathers. So I've seen enemies breathe together and they start to come down underneath their conditioning, and they start to see the commonality. So in the world that I dream of, we honor the first breath, we'd honor every breath, we'd certainly honor the last breath. It's, with such reverence. And people would learn the language of breathing that unites them internally and unites all of us.
We can rise above. I choose love.
Hey there, listeners. Are you feeling the weight of the world? Well, you're not alone. The U.S. Surgeon General says nearly 50% of parents are overwhelmed by stress. And guess what? It's affecting us all. Just last year, we heard about an epidemic of loneliness hitting half our population, especially young adults. But there's hope. I'm Scarlett Lewis, founder of the Choose Love movement. We're dedicated to your safety, health, and well-being with proactive mental health strategies. Imagine a life where stress and loneliness are replaced by joy and connection. We've already reached millions with essential life skills to prevent violence, substance abuse, and mental illness. Want to join this life-changing movement? It's easy. Visit chooselovemovement.org today. Become a member, spread the word, and access our free resources. Together, we can create a loving, supportive community. Remember, all the nurturing, healing love you give comes back to you tenfold. Thank you for choosing love.
I choose love. I choose love.
That's really beautiful. I know that there's a beautiful paragraph that I highlighted in your book about how I'll just read it. Conscious breathing is also a game-changing healing modality, an engine for social transformation. Our brains evolved for reasons of safety and security to identify in groups in which we belong and out groups that may inadvertently or consciously unwelcoming or hostile to us, be inadvertently or unconsciously unwelcome or hostile to us. That capacity can also ignite division and polarization. It is easy to experience in-group and out-of-group reactions and responses about different languages, education, socioeconomic status, gender, skin color, religion, age, body types, political beliefs, really anything. There's only one group of humans we cannot perceive as an out-group, the group of breathers. We are all breathers. I loved that. It's true, because this is something that I introduced when our country was so polarized over the topic of guns after Sandy Hook. And I was trying to think, what is a very powerful thing that we all have in common, that we could all agree on? And that was love to me at the time, based on Jesse's chalkboard message of nurturing, healing, love. And now you're bringing another element in, which I love, which is breath. That's amazing. I never thought about that, believe it or not, but that is so powerful. And I want to just back up for a minute for everybody listening who is so familiar with that scenario that you brought up of the little boy or girl who is losing their temper, having anxiety for whatever reason. And I'd like to ask, what exactly is going on in the brain, just so everyone understands. You're saying, well, they can take 3 breaths and then all of a sudden they're choosing love. But, what is actually happening in that moment? How does, and it's not just for kids, it's for big kids too. So how does breathing get us from feeling so stressed out to accessing our prefrontal cortex, where logic and reasoning reside, and the brake on our instinctual reactions, to be able, as we say, to make a heroic choice of choosing love or being kind in the moment, or being in control of ourselves, not losing control, being reconciliatory in a situation? How does breath do all that so quickly?
It's true. It's amazing that one conscious breath starts to change. Again, one thing we can go back to that we already said is about the global neural coherence, that as soon as we're breathing consciously, we've activated all these respiratory circuits throughout our brain, and we've activated the neocortex, the limbic brain, and the brainstem to all be firing about the same thing, right? So there's expansion and there's alignment.
So
now,
working from one part of the brain. So our listeners understand the triune brain, because so instead of coming from just the amygdala or the fear center, you're actually incorporating and stimulating, activating all three parts of the brain. So they're all working together just because you're breathing consciously.
Right. And they're all working together on behalf of one action, which is breathing, because it's like you're paying attention, you're appreciating why you're doing it, emotion, and the breathing is happening physiologically. So so in addition to kind of the parasympathetic activation that starts to happen just by breathing deeper and slowing down our breath usually, and I'm going to say more about that in a moment, but the parasympathetic part is
the nervous system,
right? It's very important. In addition to all of that, you're getting this expansion. So you're no longer in a tunnel vision. You're getting an expansion of your ability to, because your whole brain is getting activated by respiratory awareness and all those respiratory circuits. But there's a critical point. They're also all in alignment about something. They're in alignment about breathing. Breathing is the very first thing we did when we were born. And it was happening at the same moment we were breathing. It was happening at the same moment that we were in need of bonding, that we were wanting to love, that we were wanting to choose love, so to speak. So all of this starts to happen together. I don't think we even know all of the things that are happening, but we get expanded states of consciousness. We get the triune brain working together in alignment. We get the expansion, the greater activation of the brain, global coherence. We have parasympathetic response coming up. We've interrupted, just at a behavioral level, what we would normally do, because in order to breathe deeply, you have to release the muscle tension that was in the flight or fight or freeze or faint mode. You have to release that in order to breathe deeply. So all the muscles are also changing right at that moment. And then on top of that, you might actually have a sense of why you're doing it. I'm doing this because I need to change my state. So there's intention that goes along with it. So those are just a few of the factors of why it makes such a difference so quickly.
And then you had also added gratitude a little while before, and gratitude we use as the great mind shifter. So while you're breathing, if you start thinking about something that you're grateful for, that gives you a mood boost, shifts the focus of your thoughts from negative to positive, because you can't focus on two thoughts at once. So that's a really important part of it as well. Yeah, that's a lot that goes on just with breathing. And it's so interesting to hear that, because we just don't stop often enough to think about it. This activating life force that brings all parts of our brain together towards one intention, and can help us not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. I actually have a story too. I met somebody I can't remember his name, but he has an incredible organization. And it's based on the fact that, you know, how NAMI always said that's an organization for mental health,
Mhm.
have this saying that says 1 out of 5 people are impacted by mental health issues. And he says, you know, but at the same time, we're trying to wipe out the stigma. So how is that wiping out the stigma when we're calling out 1 in 5? So who are you? Are you the 1 in 5? You know, you're still not part of everyone. And so he always says 5 and 5, which is really cool. I really like that because we all have the range of emotions. We all, I mean, we're talking about people that have anxiety, but I have anxiety sometimes, you know, we all feel depressed sometimes. We all reach hopeless states. And
Absolutely.
just, you know, the ability to breathe, focus, have some skills and tools like gratitude to shift our focus. That's the difference really between people that can manage and move forward and those that can't. But he had a really incredible story that resonates with what you're saying. He had it all. He was a sports figure, and then he had the dancing cheerleader girlfriend, and he was making a ton of money and going to all the sports games and entertaining. And then all of a sudden he wasn't okay. And he had to give it all up. He had to move home. And he went through some really, really intensive treatments, medications that had horrendous side effects for him. He actually ended up in the hospital getting shock therapy. And the shock therapy was so intense that it flipped him off the bed. Not, you know, not to scare anybody, but he went home and he was so depressed, nothing worked on how he was feeling. And his mom said, I just took a breath class. Do you want to go to my breath coach? And he was like, are you kidding me, Mom? Like, I've been inpatient, outpatient. I've tried every medication, you know, shock therapy, and nothing works on me. You think breath is going to work? And it did. Of course, long story short, it worked. Breath was the only thing that worked. And so that really got me thinking when I met him. And then I got your incredible book, Jessica, which is breath work and psychotherapy. I don't think that you can do psychotherapy without breath work.
Oh my God, Scarlett, as usual, you're such a great visionary. I've loved this about you since we met, that you always kind of see the future. I mean, it's almost like it would be ridiculous for a therapist at this point to be doing therapy without knowing about breathing. It's so essential to a person's psychophysiological experience. I mean, and plus, we know that we have mirror neurons. So even when people aren't, like, I have my people that I train to be breath workers, it's like a 3 to 7 year training. It's very intensive, just like becoming a psychotherapist, even more so. The psychotherapists tell me that their training as a breath worker was more rigorous here at our school than psychotherapy. But I have them go and just sit in public places and just breathe deeply and watch what happens to the people around them. So if you're in a room with a psychotherapist, their breathing is affecting you. And if they're not aware of being able to facilitate your breathing, and you have anxiety or even, more serious states, like dissociation, trauma, those kinds of things, they don't know how to regulate their own breathing when you're having those experiences. That can create secondary trauma in psychotherapists. So, I mean, it needs to be, that's why the book was written, and that's why the publisher came to me. That's not the only reason. One of the reasons that the publisher came to me was that, though, that they had the understanding that this is going to need to become a part of psychotherapy. And just like, Freud had the vision of there's something going on in the unconscious, and then Jung revisioned that and said, well, it's not just the unconscious, it's the collective unconscious. And then we have people in the 20th century like Bowlby and that came up with attachment theory and then family systems theory. Then we have Dr. Dan Siegel, who came up with interpersonal neurobiology, and
Dan Siegel.
yeah, and he wrote the foreword for the book,
Yes,
as you know.
and it's a beautiful forward.
But
Yes.
psychotherapy has been re-envisioned quite a bit, and I really think this is our time to re-envision it from within the understanding of breath work and breathing. So I'm just thrilled that you see that. Yeah,
Oh,
it could be so
absolutely.
powerful.
I think it's so important for everybody listening that if you're in therapy, and it's great if you love your therapist, but I can personally say I've been in therapy my whole life with a whole slew of therapists, and there has not been one therapist that has breathed with me,
Mhm.
or even I believe conscious of that. And
Mhm.
going forward, when I get my next therapist, I will make sure that they are aware of the power of breath and that they know enough that they can direct me in that. That's so important. I want everybody listening to realize the connection and advocate for yourself in that way, because you can find people that have gone and taken Jessica's course, or other people that are aware of the power of breath, and it's so important. And we have a few minutes left, and I would really love for you, if you don't mind, Jessica, to maybe give us a practice with breath,
Mhm.
just in general. I mean, to be able to cope with today, maybe if there's a situation where we just need to find peace. Suppose
Mhm.
I have that. I want to in after Jesse, I want, Jesse's murder, I wanted to return to joy. And now I'm more into just like peace. I want to have peace within myself. I want to be able to maintain this peace in any situation, circumstance, or interaction. I want to
Mhm.
maintain my self-control, and
Mhm.
in that space be able to make the heroic choice of thoughtfully responding with love. And so with all the people that are listening, we have so many of our beautiful educators that teach Choose Love, and parents and communities, and even people that are working in corporations, and they know the choice moment model, which is that space in between what's happening and your response. And
Mhm.
in that space, that your freedom and your growth and the power that you have to thoughtfully respond with love. How can breath work help us in that moment? So get in that moment, and then in that moment be able to access our prefrontal cortex so we can make a heroic choice, even in really difficult situations.
Even in really difficult situations. So thank you for that question. I will say that's one of the most potent parts of breath work, Scarlett, is that you learn, especially when you're doing the deeper kind of breath work with a facilitator that's really well trained, you learn how to be present to every single emotion in yourself, every image that arises inside of you, every memory, physical sensations, and every emotion. And for other people too, you become much less afraid of their manifestations and what they're feeling. You really learn that there's something holding you. You could say spiritually, but it's there's an energy, there's a force field holding you, and there's a physiological thread to your life through your breathing that is steady no matter what is going on. So it's wonderful to find out that you can feel rage rising up inside of you, or rage rising up in front of inside of another person. And as long as safety, of course, you can be present to that anger and find out what's at the core of it rather than act it out. And you can offer to the other person safety so that they can find out what's at the core of it rather than acting it out. And the same is true of grief, fear, sadness, confusion, anxiety, all of it. So, okay. One thing that I'll say as we go into this practice for our listeners is that the book has over 50 practices in it, and they are practices for focus, practices for strength, empowerment, relaxation, expressing emotions, processing grief, opening up to compassion, opening to love, processing difficult memories that you might be having from your past, or even the current day, how to let go of things that might be bothering you. There's stuff for sleeping, there's stuff for energizing, there's things for helping us if we're having a respiratory challenge, we're feeling like we might be getting ill. What are some things we could do? There's so many different practices. There's practices for appreciating things and beauty. So just for people to know that there's a wealth of information there, and that the book, although it's named Breathwork and Psychotherapy, is written for everyone. It's written for every breather to take their own journey with their breath. Mm-hmm. One of the fundamental things that the book talks about is how I will offer a practice and answer your question about the greater peace. So I would invite everyone to think about potentially creating 7 minutes in your day where you do 3 things with your breathing. So the first thing is just that you turn your orientation towards your breathing, not as it being a tool or it merely being a physiological function, but you just take that moment to think about becoming a friend to your breathing or developing a friendship with your breathing. And you don't think of a friend as somebody that you take advantage of them or you use them for your own purpose, or that you are going to know them right away. You know that it could take a whole lifetime to know your friend, but it's an orientation of being like, wow, what are the secrets of this breathing that science is finding out nowadays that is matching the ancient wisdom that's come from other cultures about the power of breathing. This is in my chest, my own treasure chest here. And just to start for a moment by being like, yes, this is my friend. I'm going to get to know you a little bit more today. And then the second thing is really critical. And that is, we often say, take a deep breath. And it's a good thing to do. As we heard, the little boy took 3 deep breaths and he wasn't angry anymore. And of course, it will help us. It will interrupt a pattern. It will give us more energy. It will help us be calmer. But an even deeper secret is, what if we receive a breath? Because see, the deeper secret is that we've been being breathed all along by something, physiology, biochemistry, the force, love, God, whatever anybody wants to call it. Something bigger than just our little self has created this. So what if instead of taking a deep breath, which is going to be the one who's afraid right now, or the one who's needing to calm down, or the one who's upset, if we receive a breath, we're joining in the stream of something that's bigger than just our little self. We're joining in the being breathed, being loved. So it's a different orientation. In the end, you will land up breathing just as deeply and deeper than if you take a deep breath. If you learn how to receive your breathing every day for 7 minutes, you will find that slowly but surely over weeks and months and years, the physiological patterns like tightness in your rib cage or your jaw, the emotional patterns like we talked about with Daniela when she had the asthma that clearly got created from all the emotional turmoil in her family, all of those things will begin to unwind. And it took me 2 years to be able to breathe fully in my body, but it happened. And part of it was that I was discovering the secret of receiving breathing. So we're going to practice here in a moment. Being a friend and then receiving the breathing. And the way we're going to receive the breathing physiologically for this first time is take your hands and bend your fingers over and then put them on the bottom of each side of your rib cage very gently, like you're just feeling up into that rib cage where your diaphragm is attached. the great muscle of the body, the most important muscle, the diaphragm, is attached to the rib cage, and just gently move your hands along your rib cage from the center to the side with the feeling of loosening up the belly so that it has more room to breathe. We'll do that. And when you're on your own, you can do that. You could even do it for 5 or 10 minutes, but even if you just do it once, that's like 10 or 15 seconds, just brings that awareness to the power of the diaphragm. And now we're going to place one hand over the center of the belly and one on the chest. And we'll just do this for 3 minutes, but you hopefully might do it 7 minutes a day with your children, if you're a parent, or with your parent, if you're a child, or with a friend or a significant other. Instead of trying to change your breathing right now, what is it to just be with your breathing as it is? Have compassion for it if it's having any difficulty, if it doesn't feel full, or it's catching in any way, or you might be a person that already has a respiratory challenge. But we're just going to befriend this breath and receive it. And notice that we're being breathed without having to do anything. And then once you can notice that you're being breathed, what is it to now choose to breathe deeper in resonance with the way you're being breathed? So you join the next inhale and you just add a little energy to it and breathe a little deeper. And when you breathe out and gravity's compressing your lungs, you just let go and go with the flow of that. And then inhaling, we receive that breath and join it and amplify it.
In the end, this is all about love. All our efforts are, at core, the desire to love, to be loved, to be love, and to be the creativity to which love gives birth. And breathing is not only what makes all this possible, it is a universal vehicle for its actualization and full flowering. And we are all breathing together right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Scarlett.
This book is amazing. We're going to share where you can get a copy. It's called Breathwork and Psychotherapy by Jessica Dibb, forward by Dr. Dan Siegel. And it's just wonderful. It's a must read for life. Think about how important your breath is and learn about it and enhance your life and the life of your kids. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend you. I love you so much, Jessica. Thank you. Thank you so much for helping us today learn more about breath. I would love to have you back on and go even deeper.
Scarlett, I received your love, and I hope you receive mine. From the moment that I met you, I knew that we are sisters and comrades in arms about bringing to the world what we know matters in the end more than anything, and that is to be fully flowered in the love that we are. So it's been an honor to be on here, and I would be thrilled to come on again. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for listening. See you next time. Thank you, Jessica.
God.
Hey, hey, oh.
It's all part of us. We can all choose love. It'll lift you up if you